Let's talk about the start of Cult Gaia.
So it was kind of an accident.
Jasmin Hekmat is the founder of Cult Gaia. From the Ark Bag to the Pearl Bag, Jasmin's designs have absolutely captured the zeitgeist for over 10 years.
I brought the Ark Bag and I was like, this is the best thing in the world. But it didn't sell.
Really?
And then Instagram really started to take off.
What makes an it product?
Our product should... I was really bad at design school. I sucked. Terrible pattern maker, terrible sewer. I had a professor come by and he says, Jasmin, you're not going to pass this test, but you will be very successful one day.
Your dad founded Bratz. I mean, that's a huge cultural moment.
Yes.
Can you talk about the impact of that on your design?
I want the customers to have this childlike wonder.
What do you think is to thank for the biggest growth moments in Cult Gaia's whole journey?
I do not think Cult Gaia would be where it is without...
Jasmin Hekmat is a true creative. I have been a huge fan of her work for so long. She is the founder of Cult Gaia, who I'm sure you have seen before from so many of their it designs that have taken over the entire industry. From the Ark Bag to the Pearl Bag to now ready to wear. I think it's fair to say that Jasmin's designs have absolutely captured the zeitgeist for over 10 years now, and the company Cult Gaia just keeps growing and growing and growing, and it is not hard to see why. But it actually all started with some flower crowns and a Bratz doll, and if that isn't enough of a cliffhanger to keep you watching, I do not know what will. In this conversation, Jasmin was so open about how she manages to keep innovating as a whole, how the product has just gone from strength to strength, how the brand grew in the early years, and generally why everything comes back to product and creativity. I'm honestly so grateful to Jasmin for having this conversation for me. As I've said, I have been such a huge fan for so long. Honestly, if there is a single brand that I know that I will come back to again and again and again, and no matter what trends are happening in the rest of the world, I will love their designs. Genuinely, I know it just sounds like I'm playing up for it. Genuinely, you will have seen me wear Cult Gaia so many different times for this very reason. It just manages to break out of the mold and hit the nail on the head every single time, and I really wanted to see what was in the secret sauce behind all of that success. Please do make sure to like and subscribe. It hugely helps us be able to get incredible guests like Jasmin on, and to be able to have conversations into the behind the scenes of all of this success, and to really see how all of these incredible careers came to happen. Thank you so much for joining me.
Of course, I'm so excited.
I'm very excited for this conversation. As everyone probably knows, I am a huge Cult Gaia fan, and have been for a long time. I feel like it's the one place that I can rely on to go there, and no matter what the season and no matter what the collection, want to spend all of my money. So that's great.
I love
it's great for you.
Great news.
Well, I'm sure I'm one of many. I'd love to know first, I ask all of my guests this, at the moment, do you feel like you are more working hard or hardly working?
It's always a balance of both. I mean, I'm here, so that's hardly working. But I just came off of a lot of work. I think I'm always in flex. It's always both at the same time.
Do you feel like it yo-yos a lot between like the balance of being like all in one side, or do you feel like you keep the same balance?
I'm very good at moving on from fires. Putting them out and moving on. I don't dwell very much. So even if I was just grinding, I don't really remember. I'm on to the next. I'm very present in what's coming and what I'm doing.
I feel like that's the best trait you can have as a founder.
Yeah,
because it's just fires upon fires upon fires.
Yeah, I don't dwell very much.
So I'd like to talk a little bit before we move into, you know, your journey founding Cult Gaia and everything that went into that. I generally like to start kind of getting a bit of a sense of the context of your life, like your early life, who you were, what it was like, to really be able to tell, you know, how we got to this point. Would you mind giving me a bit of a kind of whistle-stop tour of your kind of life into your early career?
Yeah, so I was born here in Los Angeles. My dad was in the toy industry, and both of them were immigrants. They moved here after the revolution. And my mother was a fashion designer who actually went to FIDM in downtown. And then they met, and I kind of grew up with a linen closet filled with things that my mom had from college, and a lot of exposure to art and drawing. And, she was a true artist. And my dad was very entrepreneurial. So always starting something, first started with electronics and micro games, and then went into dolls, and then eventually the Bratz dolls. So when I was around 12, I spent a lot of my afternoons after school and summers working there. And it was kind of like my first foray into fashion. I always wanted to do fashion. There was never a question that I would do anything else. My mom said like my first words were sebas, which means dresses in Persian. I was obsessed with clothing and dresses and fabrics. I'd go into my mom's linen closet and pull things out and drape them on myself and pin them. And yeah, so I grew up around, I was born for this, I guess.
I think that you can always tell those people who've been like very surrounded by it. Like it feels like your design references are very wide, which I think that a lot of, at any one time, if you enter into the fashion industry, there are going to be big trends or whatever it might be. And as I said, like before we started this podcast, I feel like Cult Gaia has such a clear design frame, like as in like you kind of, know what to expect, not in a predictable way, but almost in the way that it's always going to be pushing these different boundaries no matter what trends are about. And I feel like you can kind of tell that that's come from having such like a rich knowledge of fashion and design and art.
Yeah, I think anytime something becomes a trend, I don't really like it. I'm very driven by anything that is out of the ordinary. Ordinary designs and things don't excite me, so it's not why I do what I do. And so I create a new experience or something that doesn't exist. I think trends, when something gets oversaturated, it's really not that exciting anymore.
And it is, I think, a lot about the fact that, we use fashion as a way to express ourselves. And yet the hyper-commercialization of fashion has like, rather than expressing yourselves, you're expressing that you fit into this like specific group by dressing the same as everyone else within that group,
totally.
Which in itself is completely the opposite of expressing yourself.
Yeah, I know. I think humans just want to be a part of something bigger in community. I mean, the reason why the name Cult Gaia is what it is great brands are cult-like in that it unifies, a group of people that feel aesthetically and similarly together. So I do think that there's a way, and I think that's what we're doing. You know what to come to us for. There will always be something special. But yeah, I'm grateful for the trends we've started. It's obviously made us successful and made us able to continue what we're doing. But in general, we aren't driven. We're not trying to make something for everyone.
I'd love to speak about, obviously, your dad founded Bratz.
Yeah.
That's a huge cultural moment.
Yes.
Can you talk about the impact of that on you as a person, but also as on your design?
Yeah. I think I really learned the power of branding, the power of making something unique and different to anything that's out there in the world. If you look at a Bratz doll, it's looking at product through the lens of a child. And that's kind of something I try to do with my product, is their minds are so pure and unpolluted that they notice every detail, every stitch. When you sit with a doll with a kid, they notice the quality of the hair. They notice the little charms. They notice the zipper. Even the packaging is an experience in and of itself. And when I make things for Cult Gaia, even the customer experience, I think about it in that I want the customers to have this childlike wonder. I want you, from the first time you see a product on someone else, you're like, oh, wow. And then you go to the website and you're struck again, and then you order the product, and then you you receive the package and the packaging, and that's also an amazing experience. And then, when you talk to someone from our team, you're also touched. And hopefully then you go to our stores and you get that same sense of this childlike wonder and joy. And I learned, I guess, the value of that through toys and Bratz dolls.
I hadn't truly thought about how different Bratz dolls were from the other dolls at the time. Like, I'm just thinking about, things like Barbie and things like what you would kind of expect when you're, looking at the different children's toys, which I personally don't spend too much time looking at now. But it's so markedly different. Like I can imagine at the time it would have either been like a huge success or, as with everything like this, people being like, okay, which actually I can also see come through in your designs as well, in the way that actually you have to kind of take those risks and step outside of what everyone else is doing in order to be able to genuinely make a difference.
Yeah, which I think is much harder now when there's eyeballs on you taking those risks.
And you can just imagine, one of those things where it's, you put something out and people are like, but you've got to be able to have those. And we'll come on to like the, how you've been able to evolve past each hit at a time, because I do think you're one of the brands that have done that so well. Whereas, there's a cash need within a business, and there's also, the desire to make more of something that's already making you money.
Exactly.
But also at the same time, you've got to keep evolving. Otherwise, you're just going to be just the Ark Bag brand, which obviously you guys have never stuck within that.
Yeah.
And we'll come on to speak about all of that. I'd like to first speak about your decision to go to design college or to study design. Could you tell me a little bit about that experience, especially as someone who probably had a huge amount more experience than a lot of people who were there, having grown up being literally surrounded by it?
Right. I went to Otis for foundation year, and then I transferred to FIT in New York because I wanted to be in New York. And I thought it's so important for me to actually learn the foundational basics of sewing and pattern making and draping and marketing. I did a double major. So I was really bad at design school. I sucked. I was nothing compared to my peers. I was a terrible sewer, terrible pattern maker, a very good draper, but I just didn't take it. Like, I glued dresses together.
Perfect. I can't wait to go buy something.
And I was just like, you get the picture, right? Mm-hmm. You get the idea. And I had a professor who we had like a critique coming in, and that we were going to be graded. And I had a professor come by and he says, Jasmin, you're not going to pass this test, but you will be very successful one day. And I'll never forget that. Gave me fuel. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just takes one person to believe in you, to give you, the juice to keep going.
I can imagine having grown up around so much design inspiration, and probably I can imagine that at that time, especially in school, you would have been just so much more surrounded by that kind of compared to everyone else. But then actually going to study it officially and having, as you say, like real weaknesses that you were realizing, I can imagine that wasn't easy to, you can process it now looking back and being like, well, it just wasn't my strength. But I can imagine at the time that would have been really hard.
It was very difficult. So technical design and that kind of process and those kinds of things I wasn't very good at. I was very conceptual. I still am. So I was around like wizards who were amazing. And it also taught me like you can partner with incredible talent to get, your dreams realized.
No, absolutely. And how did you keep pushing at that stage? Was there ever a point where you thought that maybe this wasn't for you based on the fact that you'd obviously had your challenges?
I kissed a lot of ass. Mm-hmm. I made really good friends with professors that I knew I wasn't going to do well in the class.
Great.
And I got help from roommates I would like do favors for them to do my patterns.
Mm-hmm.
I made it happen. I figured it out.
Which is really what business is. And like, also, I always think about the fact that within the education system, obviously, you know, it's great to be able to do a wide range of things, but realistically, when you go into the rest of life, like, you can do great things.
Well,
being
there's
only
always
good at...
someone better than you.
Oh, 100%.
But the biggest thing is you're all, even at the peak of success, you're still at the bottom. You know, my whole philosophy is like, everyone's at the top and the bottom at the same time. And I learned that early on, and obviously I experience that all the time now. But in school, I feel like I have these great ideas. I'm so excited to be there, but there's always going to be someone who's better than what you are doing.
And do you think that's given you an underlying level of confidence based on the fact that...
No, it's given me grit and a crazy work ethic and desire to succeed no matter what.
So let's talk about the start of Cult Gaia. How soon did the idea for it come in terms of, you know, in relation to your time studying?
So it was kind of an accident. Cult Gaia was right next, I was right next to the flower district at FIT. It's like 2 blocks away. And I'd walk these streets to go to school, and they had these beautiful silk flowers. I'm a very inspired person. Like, being able to just roam around and be inspired by anything I see is still a huge part of who I am. So I also love flowers still. And I'd see these beautiful silk flowers and paper flowers. And so I started making flower crowns for friends, just for like birthdays, or you're sad, or graduation, or anything, you know, as like here's the Jasmin gift, right? And everyone started wearing them around New York. And the doorman used to be like, oh, you guys are the girls with the flowers in your hair. It kind of became this thing that everyone recognized. It became a huge conversation starter, so it made it really easy for people to come and approach you. Guys were like, can I buy this, please? I want to give it to my date. And it kind of became this thing where you became a magnet. And simultaneously, I'd collected vintage fabric my whole life, a lot of vintage silk. So I grew up going to a place called International Silks and Woolens here on Beverly Boulevard. And they have a lot of dead stock silk. And I obsessed with textiles. My uncles were in textile. So I've just collected fabric my entire life as well. And I started making these wired head wraps that I called turbans. And it was great because you got to put this beautiful piece of fabric on your head. And these two things kind of just became a thing of things that I was making. Meanwhile, I was concepting my couture line that I called Gaia Osto. And it was going to be like very beautiful, high price point gowns. And one night I was having dinner at my place with some friends. And they're like, why are you doing that? Everyone's trying to buy these crowns and turbans off your head. Just do this. And I was like, actually, that's a great idea. Well, I need a name. So I always loved the name Gaia. It's the goddess of Mother Earth and the daughter of chaos. And to me, chaos is an incredibly creative force. And so is obviously Mother Nature and femininity. And so I needed the name Gaia in it, and cult, because great brands are cult-like, like I said, and girls with flowers in their hair, like roaming around New York, is kind of cult-like in a way. So that night, came up with a name, took pictures of product on my friends' heads, named the product after them, learned how to make a website through this. There used to be a website called Weebly before Shopify, and then Goodsy. And I just uploaded this stuff. And then probably like a few months later, I got a feature in Daily Candy, which was a really big subscription, email subscription at the time. And I got so much attention and orders. And for me, that was huge. I still chase that feeling. I stayed up all night to wait for that article to go live. And then from there, I decided I needed to move home to focus on this. My parents weren't paying for my life in New York, so I needed to move into their house to do this. And I got some help, and we started making flower crowns and turbans, like getting bigger and bigger orders. We were doing it all ourselves, me and someone else named Agada, who still works for me. And then from there, I brought the Ark Bag, and I ordered 1,000 pieces, and I was like, this is it. This is the best thing in the world. It had the same kind of effect on people as the crowns did. People were like, what is that? I need it. But it didn't sell.
Interesting.
It didn't sell for like 2 years.
Really? So it sat there for a good while.
I was giving it away.
And what made you keep it? Was that still the first 1,000 orders?
Yeah. So it just...
1,000 orders.
1,000 bags.
The 1,000 bags.
I couldn't give it away. I was trying to give it away. I couldn't. It was crazy. And at the time, flower crowns became... So I moved home. Flower crowns became like you could find it everywhere. So I kind of pivoted the business, and I made Cult Gaia a flower crown cart company. And the way we made money and also kind of got our brand name out there is Levi's or Revolve or different, some bar mitzvahs or parties or showers, they'd ask us to come and make fresh flower crowns. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of giving away something that died. But they'd pay us to make the crowns on site. And I ended up training girls across the country so we could do this, all across the U.S. And so I did that for a little bit.
And so at this point, you've obviously, you've bought some stock of the Ark Bag, but the majority of what you're doing is you're doing this flower crown business.
Yeah.
How did that pivot into, or like, how did the Ark Bag even start to take off? Did that just sit there while a few other designs came out in between and then it took off?
No, I was like fully doing flower crowns.
Really? So it was that
fresh flower crowns. I was like, okay, I'm making money doing this.
Mm-hmm.
This is fun, new. I get bored very easily. So I was like, this is something, a new challenge. It made people really happy. I got the same joy out of it that I do now out of making product. But I was giving the Ark Bags away at like the Revolve events in Coachella under the table. And I was giving it to influencers. And Instagram really started to take off, and I took some good pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it was like selling like hotcakes.
What do you think turned the tide in terms of where the success started coming from?
Marketing and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
The right people wearing it and taking pictures of it and putting it on. At the time, Instagram had just taken off. So it was the first time you really saw people or influencers taking pictures of themselves with things. And this bag was perfect for that.
Mm-hmm.
It made people press like, which was like an amazing form of currency at the time.
Uh-huh.
And now still is.
How did you know at that point whether to move on to another design or to just keep, riding this very specific design wave?
I did ride it for a little bit, but I I did it in acrylic.
Right.
That also taught me, I think, great design you can do usually in many different fabrications. And so I introduced an acrylic, and I started to do like new different shapes using the same kind of technique.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think the name made it big as well.
Mm.
And the power of naming your products appropriately.
Mm.
It's the arc shape. It's also looks like a half moon, like the sun split in half. It also radiates like the sun, and it rocks back and forth like.
Mm. I can imagine getting a very successful design. I've heard a lot of people talk about the paralysis of moving on to a next good one. How long did it take you to hit your next like gold mine?
So I quickly went into clothing,
Mm-hmm.
Which is what I always wanted to do. And I knew that now I had an audience that I could deliver that to. And I didn't like, I was making some clothes for our photo shoots because I didn't want to shoot with other people's things. I wanted to be able to control the entire vision and the look. And so I quickly started doing ready to wear. And that was very well received. And we had a dress called the Willow. And I'll never forget the first day. And you don't have high expectations the first time you launch ready to wear. And this dress blew out. And we're like, whoa, okay. People care. And then wholesalers started to take notice, luckily. So they started coming around. But I was so lucky that I owned my customer at that point. I do not think Cult Gaia would be where it is without that customer. If it was just a wholesale business, there's absolutely no way we would have evolved. There's no way we would have been a ready-to-wear brand. I remember buyers saying, "You're an it bag brand." How do we know it's not a one-hit wonder? We're not going to pick up the collection. We're going to wait and see. And actually, Moda Operandi was one of the first to pick us up.
So let's talk about that, because I think that is very, very important to talk about within the fashion industry. And I think that we hear a lot about the success of D2C brands and owning your audience and owning the way you present to them and the entire image and the brand and the shots and all of this. But I also think there's an element of co-signing and this kind of you've made it effect of being with certain retailers and wholesalers. And I think that those things often come at odds with one another, because you want to make sure, people know that you could be on Revolve, but at the same time, what if they shoot it in a way that you don't want it?
Yeah.
How did you balance those two things?
Trial and error. But I do think, obviously, wholesale is extremely important for that reason. When the Ark Bag really took off, my friend Claire Distenfeld, who owned the store called 5 Story in New York, put the bag next to a Gucci bag. At the time, the bag was like $50. And merchandising them next to each other spoke volumes to me, because it's what I believe. It's how I believed people shop. I don't believe people shop based on price point. Like when you go to a department store, there's the higher price point designer level versus the contemporary. And she proved that in her beautiful boutique and showed that that's what people want. And I think other people followed. And I think it set the stage for what we're able to do at Cult Gaia. We're able to have, very affordable, or not affordable, just entry level pricing for something that's super beautiful. And then we also have the $5,000 gowns with extreme workmanship on them.
No, absolutely. And I do think that's one of the things that you do so well as a brand, in the way that you're going there for something special. And yes, it's pricey, like, as in it's not, it's not designer pricey, but it's not high street. But actually I feel like the edge you really have is as well based on the fact that, like, there is no way that you could access that type of design anywhere kind of lower than that price point, which I do think is a very valuable trait to have as a brand.
Yeah.
And definitely something to kind of protect overall. I think that your journey as a whole, what strikes me as so kind of important about it is how much of it has come from things that have been quite natural to your journey. Like, there was never a point that, or from what we've heard so far, that with the flower crowns, for example, you very much leaned into them. You weren't necessarily like, okay, well, now this has to be an only flower crown business for the rest of my life. Like, this is what we're doing. It feels like you were really led by the art at every different stage of the business, which I think very much shines through now. How did you really find your kind of design footprint when it comes to ready to wear as a whole? I can imagine from the first collection, it would be something very specific, but you probably want to evolve out of that, and you want to evolve out of that into something new. How did you really establish that kind of your take on ready to wear?
Yeah, I think at our core, we are designing to make women feel like really beautiful. And also be the best dressed in the room all the time, and do so in a elegant but very creative way. I think, making women feel like goddesses when they wear our pieces is really important and drives us. I obviously have grown a lot as a designer since the beginning. Our fabric choices and our hardware choices and our fit has improved so much because I'm, kind of learning as I go. But yeah, at our core, it's, I choose fabric that has generally a little bit of imperfection. Like this dress I'm wearing, you can see it's not just one shade. It has 2 colors of yarn. So I always say the more you look, the more you see, and that's how we approach our ready-to-wear.
So let's talk about the need or the desire to kind of scale a business at the same time as obviously, you like me are very product obsessed.
Yeah.
And there's an element of that where you need to scale the business, but you also want to make sure that every single product is as good as that product should be. How have you managed to balance those two things?
I think a planner is extremely important, a good planner, to help understand where there's opportunity and where to move forward. I recut something that does very well, and we do it for like 1 or 2 more seasons. And I think that helps bring scale because you don't really, sometimes but sometimes you don't know. I've been wrong, know? And I think I'm at a place now where if I really believe in the product, it's going to do well. And at the PP and the proto and SMS stage, you just need to get it delivered properly.
And have there ever been times where you've come out with a product that you, especially at the beginning, that you're kind of like, you're excited about, but you're not like, this is game changing?
The EOS bag, which is an icon. I wasn't crazy about it.
Right.
But I knew it would do so well. And it surpassed all my expectations. And now I love it. But at first, I felt like it was too easy. I put beautiful ball, and I varied the sizing. I think it's a beautiful bag. But the best product for me comes really easy. It's in a moment that I design it, or I literally dream of product. Like I wake up, and my team knows because I schedule my Slacks, so I'm not blowing everyone up in the middle of the night. And I schedule them at 9 a.m. and they get like of all my ideas. But I dream of product, and usually it's those easy decisions and those easy, quick moments of insight that make the best product.
And what rules do you have around releasing things that you're not actually that excited about?
I won't release it anymore. I used to move forward. Now I won't. I'll hold it.
And why do you think that's important?
I think focus is really important. And I think whatever you put out into the world, you can't take back. You can't take it back.
Especially within fashion, when branding isn't just branding, like product is branding, product is marketing. Like it's so easy to put something out that's overly commercialized that you're like, yeah, we know it will make some cash. We know that this is I can imagine 100 things with logos that you guys could put out right now that you would know would absolutely
I
clean
literally
up.
Don't know how. The biggest joke is like, I'm not commercial enough. So anytime someone hears me try to make something more commercial, they're like, where's Jasmin? Where is she? Because I told you, I don't like anything that I feel like I've seen anywhere else.
But that shines through. And I feel like that, I always say when looking at like our product roadmap and looking at how we're going to build over time and what we've done too much of and all of these different things is like there's so many things that you can create that's going to get a lot of cash for the business.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, of course you need to balance that to a certain extent. But the second you balance that over the core of the product offering and your kind of DNA is it's not necessarily that it will come crashing down immediately. To me, that like sets off this timer. It's like, okay, so if you saturate that, like, yes, that will be hugely successful for a proportion of time if you're lucky. But I always think that the second that becomes oversaturated and the second that starts being too much about the commercialization, you won't even know it's hit you and you'll be out the other side.
Well, yeah, when it's oversaturated, you get into the markdown game.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hardest thing about wholesale. I think they are committed to what sold last year. And I understand it's hard to take risks.
Right. It's
you don't know what's gonna do well. So now I launch product early myself because I'm willing to take the risk. And if it does well, I will tell them this is gonna do well. Now is your turn.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of increases like the life cycle of something good. It's win-win.
Wholesale is it's a merchandising game. It's not a design game.
Right.
And actually that is great for some, that's great for cash, as we said. But like in terms of actually, are you going to get the next big thing? Are you going to take bets on something? Like I know if I absolutely love a design, I will take the biggest bets on it. And I don't know what it is because I'm not an overly risk taker, but when I'm sure of something, like
go hard in the paint.
Yeah, like we had this this product called Contour that just came out, and it's essentially shapewear, but it's designed to be worn without anything else. So it's not got the obvious ruching, it's kind of in t-shirt styles, in long sleeve styles, in tank styles, so that you wouldn't know it was shapewear, just because I wore shapewear under things and I found it was just like bulging me out a little bit. And I remember trying the first samples and I literally went into work the next day and I was like, double the order. And they were like, we were already like, the MOQs are high and like we're buying a lot, and I'm like, double the order. I'm like, it's on me. But if you like, the second we come out with this, and lo and behold, we came out with it and it literally sold out within like minutes. And I think that it's like the ability to back yourself, but also to build that knowledge over time of like, you do get this sense. You're like, this is it.
Believing in that instinct. Is, to me now, one of the most valuable things.
So how have you built that instinct over time?
I've had it. I think I got surrounded by a lot of people who are which is great, but data-oriented or have their own opinions. And I'm a big listener. I run my company in a way where everyone has a voice. And it's my best and my worst quality. So I listen and I want everyone's opinion to be heard. And I'm curious about everyone's opinion. So it kind of dims the inner instinct, a little bit when you listen a lot. And so I've just learned that I'm here because, a large part to my strong instincts and decisions, and to have a little bit more value and confidence in that.
No, absolutely. And I think that's very valuable to build. A lot of the time people need to work backwards from that. Like a lot of the time people need to work out how to take in other people's opinions, especially like people who are particularly strong in their like craft. I think it's really, I've spoken to a lot of people on this podcast who are like, oh, I actually needed to, be able to listen to other people and bring people in and hire great people and all of this. And I think that is incredibly important. But at the same time, as you've said, like, before you had all of the people in the room, there was a reason why you struck gold a few times.
Yeah.
And it must be hard to balance the idea of making sure you are being gracious and taking in opinions and not being like needing to be right for the sake of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, understanding when your instinct is correct.
Yeah. It's the hardest thing.
And so how big is the team now?
We're about 100 people.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
I don't think bigger is better.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But it's a lot.
And what is your role specifically within that? Like, what do you refer to your title as?
I am very involved in product and marketing.
And how have
But
you...
also very much the business.
Yeah, I can imagine the strategy overall, like that can't be done without, I mean, it's led by product and marketing as it is, like if, you know, in terms of your trajectory. In terms of leading teams in that way, how have you found that journey as the company's grown and you've naturally had to lead more and more people when obviously the reason you were here in the first place was for a lot of it was design. You know, a lot of it wasn't necessarily, I'm sure you're a great manager, but it wasn't necessarily that you were the best manager in the game. So how have you found that journey?
It's honestly one of the hardest ones, I think. You're kind of thrown into it. You know, I interned at other places. I didn't work at other places, which is a huge difference. And I consciously didn't, you know, work at other places because I knew it would probably, I'd get stuck, you know, with the reward of the paycheck and working towards the next goal for someone else instead of just getting going. So I didn't have that experience. So I learned as I went. But luckily, it's been an amazing learning experience. And I've learned a lot from people I've worked with and over time. And I guess I'm very empathetic, which I think works in your favor as a female boss, but also makes things a little more challenging because I think people have an expectation of you that you create by yourself, that you need to hold up. And that becomes really hard when sometimes the business needs to come first also.
I often find it really hard, the balance between being like an empathetic person and wanting to make sure everyone's okay and make sure everyone's really happy at work and all of this, and at the same time like being in a growing business there are going to be like elements of that are going to be really fucking hard, and you have such different responsibilities in terms of being able to go into a room and make sure the work is the best it can be, and also make sure that people are the happiest they can be. And as the founder, that comes back to you again and again and again, despite the fact that a lot of the time, I mean, those aren't always at odds with one another, but sometimes they are. And like having to be the bad guy, I don't mean walking in and firing everyone. I just mean being able to say, do you know what, this work isn't where it needs to be and we need to do this, or I think we need to think bigger, or whatever it might be. And you know someone's put loads of work into that, and that's not easy.
No, it's not easy, but I think, I've learned that setting the expectation up front is the most important thing you can do. So I have a post-it on my, because I realized like I don't like being told what to do. So I don't really like telling people what to do. And so I have a post-it on my computer that says clarity is kindness, as a reminder that it's okay. Being clear doesn't mean you're telling someone what to do. And other people sometimes like to be told what to do just because I don't enjoy it. Doesn't mean that's not what other people need. So I've learned to be extremely clear about my expectations and forthright.
No, I think that's
been really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that a lot of the time we, especially as women, and we're not a homogenous group and et cetera, but like I do think that we are, like a lot of the time we perceive softer and less direct to be kinder. And a lot of the time I don't necessarily think that's the case. And that's something that I very much had to build as a founder and as a manager, like going in and kind of just being like, well, you know, like it could be like this, it could be like this or whatever. And actually you've got a really clear vision, and you know you've got a clear vision, and you know that no matter what that person comes back with, if it's not what you wanted, you're not going to be happy with it. And actually, therefore, not being direct in that moment was not a kind thing to do.
Yeah. No, I've had situations where I'm like, I told you guys that I didn't like this. And my team was like, no, you didn't. You said I'd be vague, so it could also be their idea. It's because I had this, it's harder for me to be direct. It comes less naturally to me, but I think I totally agree. It's so important.
What would you say the most key hires that you've made in Cult Gaia's journey were?
The first hire I made was operations. And then I think a planner is so important to be able to make the revenue you need and keep tracking towards that. And then obviously product development, production.
Mm-hmm. And has there been did you see like a clear inflection point at any point with growing a specific team?
So yes, I have a right hand. She's my CFO.
Okay.
She wasn't always my CFO, but we have amazing synergy. And she taught me through our relationship and through some of the best teams in my company that synergy is so much more important than a resume or skill.
Mm-hmm.
Like shared vision, same kind of work ethic, and this shared obsession, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And like you like each other, it makes it easier to work.
No, I completely agree with that. And I think that like when you're a solo founder, it's quite a unique position in that like no matter what you build the company to be, there's to a certain extent, there's not necessarily going to be your equal. Like, yes, the shareholding could get so high that you don't have a large percentage. Generally, the success of the company is somewhat tied to, especially if the founder has a good instinct, the founder's ability to be like, no, we're not going to do it. Like I actually veto this. Like we're going to do it in this direction. And I think that if you are a solo founder, finding someone that might be a CEO, might be COO, might be CFO, might be chief of staff, like a board member, whatever it might be, that have that synergy and balances out certain things that you don't necessarily bring,
right,
personally has allowed me to be a better version of myself.
Absolutely.
In the way that I don't so much need to concentrate on mitigating all of my weaknesses or being someone I'm not. Like, I'm not the finance person. Like,
yeah.
I'm not. Like, I'm just, no one wants me to be that. But actually being able to then lean more into, like, what am I good at? And I feel like that was the biggest thing. Like, I remember reading a book and it being like, don't be a solo founder. And I was like, cool, well, actually quite late for that now. Like, we're a bit deep into the journey. So, like, I'm not really sure what you want me to do. But actually, like, that for me was the biggest thing, because I was like, if this was a co-founder, we'd be able to sit in a room and we'd be able to like nicely argue and be like, no, it's this, no, it's this. That is the only person who is going to have the like ability to like actually go at it with you. And I feel like you need to have that somewhere. You can't be in a room full of yes people who are just being like, sure, Jasmin. Like, as in, like,
you need to be able to go at it. I always say like the friction is good. Mm-hmm. We need to get you. It's okay to disagree. The second you're scared to, disagree or have conflict with your team is really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say, like, let's please find a way to do it respectfully, but do not be afraid of it.
I want to know, with all of this and with managing an 100-person team, how do you stay creative?
I get very creative when I travel.
Mm-hmm.
Or when I'm alone or when I'm in nature. I'm very inspired by... I'm very inspired. Like, I'm looking at the lamp behind you and it's another product, Like, inspiration is not my problem. Mm-hmm. I'm actually too inspired.
Okay.
I need to be less inspired.
No, I don't think anyone wants that from
more
you.
Focus. There's not enough time to put out all the things I want to put out.
I feel like that's a great place to be in. Has there ever been a point within your journey that you found kind of like creative block or been stunted?
Yes, I do, but I know it'll come, and it generally does.
And is there a trigger or something that you find?
It could be a sound. It could be a piece of art where it's like the flower in the art, and I like those colors and those brush strokes, and it becomes like a spool of thread. You just keep pulling, or I become obsessed with a word. So I'm like, what does this word mean visually? And it's a thread that you just keep pulling and pulling.
Mm. And what do you think is to thank for the biggest growth moments in Cult Gaia's whole journey?
Products that people are obsessed with. I believe that has really pushed the needle for us. I think we've been able to pivot and elevate really nicely. I mean, when I think of how I was hustling flower crowns for so long, and now we're here, I think it's an amazing story, and I think a lot of it has to do with beautiful product the it items and the magic of our campaigns. You know, when I started, I didn't believe in, this is still a challenge for me. I've gotten better, but I didn't believe in collections. I don't think it's logical that you will go buy 5 pieces that all have the same print or pattern or language in it, even though it's going to look amazing on a rack.
Mm-hmm.
You're only going to buy one.
Mm-hmm.
So I really built the business around pieces at the beginning. I was making pieces that everyone should have. And then they can have more, you know, in a way, like you go to a vintage store and you get this experience where everything is special. And I always wanted our customer to feel that way. As we've evolved, I've obviously found a way for the language to speak through more of the things we make. But it's still a challenge for me. I think it's our best quality and our worst quality.
So about understanding what like can help designs complement each other without necessarily needing to like split sales because no one's wearing 5 things.
Department stores want collections.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the more I think about it, the more I think just how many it products Cult Gaia has had.
Yeah.
Like there have been so many. For a brand of your age,
I know,
you must
crazy.
over-index like throughout it. What makes an it product?
I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what makes it. I don't think we always know. But I rely a lot on an exhale to know. And in our line review or sketch review, if you hear people like go, I'm like, or wow, you kind of know that you're onto something. I say our product should sound like an exhale when you see it. It should feel like that moment of joy and wonder. But I believe in product that photographs well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very important for an it item. I always say it's a great product if you pull it out of the bottom of a box and it's crumbled up and you pull it out and it's still beautiful. But yeah, I think bags, if you can do multiple fabrications, it's a good sign. I like bags that stand generally, but like our Hera bag was a crazy success and it doesn't stand. So I think also the right timing is everything.
When you've like had that, say like the product presentation to the team and you hear your exhales and you're like, we've got a few it products in here, do you over-index on the campaign around those products in particular? Like, do you take it and run with it?
Now we do, yeah. Now we shoot more content of what we think will sell more.
I always feel throughout there's such different stages in the design process with like going from design, even like sketch to proto to actually like getting the samples. Like the ones that I think are going to be the it product often change from those 2 specific stages. But once I've seen the first sample of something, like it is just that, like it will be literally circled in every marketing plan, like in red. And my biggest belief always within a business is to strengthen your strengths. Like I would much rather us post 10 times more about the hero product. And if that one's not doing well, like this is not a business just for commercials. Like as in like, yes, I'm not going to force it down your throats. If you don't like it, like you're never going to hear about it again.
Yeah. So I say pour gas on it. If something's doing well, I'm like, where's the gas?
Yeah. Right. And so what type of levers do you pull to be pulling gas on it?
We do Instagram ads and we get girls to wear it.
Mm-hmm. And that's influencer marketing.
Yes.
And do you generally do that via, I mean, it's a high price point product, so gifting, paid?
We'll reach out to like girls we work with and be like, do you like this? You want to wear this? Luckily, Cult Gaia is very organic. I built it very organically. We don't really pay people to wear us.
I can imagine that's like that ties in so well with having an it product. Like people want the
They
it product.
want it, yeah.
I want to come on to speak a little bit about your journey into motherhood and running a brand at the same time, because I can imagine there must be quite tricky times as part of that. Could you talk to me a little bit about how that's kind of impacted your overall journey?
Yeah, I think it's made me value time more. Obsessive. Time to me is also a product. I'm obsessed with time and the fact that I can't get it back. So my days are like, if I need eyeballs on something for 15 minutes, it needs to be scheduled. So I'm extremely disciplined with my schedule. I'm very disciplined with when I'll be with the kids, when I'll see them. I also, in a way, becoming a mother gave me like a superpower. Because when you look at time through the lens of a kid, you realize that it's not infinite. And so it kind of made me like Mario and Mario Brothers, like eating all the, like the babies are like the mushrooms that give me like the superpower. And I'm like, let's go. I don't have time. I only have so much time to have my meetings. I only have so much time to make the best brand. There's with kids, time is like constantly in your face. My husband is extremely helpful, which I think goes a really long way. My parents live here. It makes it much easier. I have a lot of empathy for women who do not have help, and family nearby or partners who are helpful. I think that goes a really long way. And I don't want to take that for granted and say it's easy, even though I make it look easy, I have a lot of help. But yeah, I think it gives you a really different perspective on creating,
And what does a typical day look like for you?
I wake up, my kids usually come in the bed either in the middle of the night or the morning. We wake up, we get the kids ready, have breakfast, take my son to school. Then I'll go to work. Luckily, like convenience also plays a huge part of this. My son's school is 15 minutes from my house and 5 minutes from the office. So I'm able to go and like volunteer if I need to for an hour or 20 minutes and be as present as I can there. And then I'll go to the office, I'll have my coffee, I'll have my meetings. Every day is different, but lots of product meetings, lots of approvals, lots of working on the next seasons, fittings, fabrics, meetings, and then I'll pick him up at 3:00. Or he'll either come to the office or he has an after school activity. And then I'm home probably by like 5, 6.
And what would you say the biggest thing you've learned is since about having a business, about managing people, since having had children?
To have more empathy, and that it's fucking hard. It's really hard. Your priorities change a lot. Like I like working late. Love to work late when no one else is working. My best ideas come in the middle of the night, and I don't have that opportunity as much as I think I used to, and that's challenging.
Is there anything that you wish you knew before having had kids?
No. I don't think too much about things. I do before I do them.
Neither.
I don't dwell. I just do it and I figure it out. And again, your best quality is your worst quality. I don't think so much.
One of my favorite sayings is about not making the right decision, but making the decision right. And I think if you're an impulsive person, which I absolutely am, like I think I'm impulsive. I'm very considerate about a lot of things. I'm impulsive about a lot of things as well. But if there's one thing about me, it's that I will work every single second of every single day to make sure that was the right decision, and that, it's going to be all right in the end, or it's going to be the best decision I ever made, whatever it might be.
I love that. Make the decision right.
I'd love to know, before we finish, what the best piece of advice that you've ever been given is.
My dad used to always say, when a pomegranate tree's fruit, and it's very, very full. The branches bow to teach me about humility. And I think always being humble and having humility is extremely important. I don't know if that's a business advice. I think business advice, my 2024 focus is clarity is kindness. And for anyone who's trying to do something, I would say any movement is good. You know, it's almost like starting Cult Gaia, I had no expectations and I just did it. When you have to start something new and there's expectations, it almost steals momentum in a way. So I always say, just do it. Every day, just do one thing that gets you closer to what you want to do.
Like, we see so much of other people's journey, and don't get me wrong, like, that's an absolute blessing. We're literally here right now, like, talking about your journey. But I also think it instills in us this, like, such high expectations. And I just think that, like, especially when it comes to starting a business, it's not that you shouldn't have high expectations or high goals or whatever it might be. It's the fact that this kind of rigidity of expectation kind of steals this momentum, and it feels like slightly misplaced. It feels like, actually, that from my experience anyway, every valuable thing there is to know about my business has been learned once it was already started, even though I had every single illusion about what it could look like. And I feel like that's just saying, like, sometimes done is better than perfect. Like, just start, make some movement, learn some things.
Done is better than perfect. I think I owe a lot of my success to that.
Well,
now it should be perfect, but
now perfect is perfect, and it must be
perfect. If anyone on my team is listening,
we will not accept anything else.
But done is also very important.
Acceptable sometimes. Done and perfect. Thank you so much. You've been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your journey.
Thank you so much. This was great.